We're going to talk, this is the first in a series of videos, all on the subject of Alabama DUI law. And this first video is going to be on the history of Alabama DUI law. So let's go back to the turn of the century, 1905 to 1920. That is the time period in which the automobile or motor vehicle began its mass production. People like Ransom Olds, Henry Ford, and along with the mass production and use of the motor vehicle, it coincided with the need for laws to be passed concerning the use of those vehicles. So it was 1911 that Alabama had passed its first DUI. It was then DWI, driving while intoxicated rather than driving under the influence. And in 1911, they passed Alabama's first DUI law. It consisted of one sentence. They said it would be a misdemeanor to operate a motor vehicle while in an intoxicated condition. One sentence. It's illegal to operate a motor vehicle while in an intoxicated condition. That was well stated and concise, and I'll tell you what they've done over the years from one sentence. They've gone from one sentence to 14 pages in our DUI law in Alabama. So the fine was up to $25 on a first offense DUI and up to $500 on a second offense. In 1923, they added a jail sentence of up to 6 months. In 1927, Alabama passed the Alabama Highway Code. That's when they changed over from a driving while intoxicated to driving under the influence, 1927. Changed from DWI to DUI. They made loss of license on a second offense. During the 30s, 36, 37, they increased the penalties, and they even made a mandatory loss of license for even a first offense. So from the late 30s to 1980, there was little or no statutes passed concerning DUI. And in 1980, what happened was there were so many different DUI laws across the country. Each state had something different, and the federal government steps in and says, if you want our federal dollars, federal highway dollars, you will pass this DUI law. And that's what Alabama did in 1980. And for the first time, it was made illegal to drive with a blood alcohol content of a certain amount. So the legal limit, or it's really the illegal limit, was 0.10% blood alcohol at the time of driving. And that was part of the 1980 bill that was passed. Also in 1980, they added this concept of actual physical control, and we'll talk about that in video number 2 when we start talking about the actual Alabama's DUI law. So prior to this, you had to be driving the vehicle, and in 1980, they made it to where if you were in just actual physical control, car didn't have to be moving, or the vehicle. And interestingly enough, in 1980, though you think the laws were getting stricter, they made loss of license discretionary for a first offense DUI. Excuse me. It was in this period of time, 1979, I graduated from law school, and in 1980 and 1983, they made these substantial changes to the Alabama DUI law. So I looked at it and I said, well, I can practice criminal defense law, but the client I'm representing is not really, doesn't fit the criminal profile. As a general rule, DUI, it crosses the whole social gamut class. So in 1983, they made it a mandatory loss of license on a first offense, and in 83 Act is very similar to the DUI laws that we have on the books today, which is 2017, August. So, under the influence of alcohol was not defined by the statute. And so through the years, the law developed, or when a judge would tell the jury what the DUI law was if someone was on trial, they would say this as it relates to the definition of under the influence. If the individual was under the influence of alcohol to any extent, then they were under the influence of alcohol. To me, that made it zero tolerance, which was not the intent of the law and not what the law should be, in my opinion. And so I fought for many years up to the Alabama Supreme Court and persuaded them to adopt my definition of under the influence of alcohol, and that's drinking to the point that the alcohol makes you unsafe due to the amount consumed. That definition is still the definition of under the influence of alcohol even today, 2017. The last two legislative sessions, they've had two bills to change that definition, but as of now, that definition from the Alabama Supreme Court in 1989 is still law. So there have been, they added a felony provision in 1994 for a fourth or subsequent offense in 5 years, and made it a felony with a minimum sentence of a year and a day, maximum of 10. What happened in 1996, they made some substantial changes to the DUI laws. Again, the federal government dangling the money carrot for highway dollars. If you want highway dollars, you will pass these laws. They lowered the blood alcohol illegal limit to 0.08%, down from 0.10%. 1996. They also made a school bus driver or daycare driver 0.02 illegal limit, and they also created provisions for underage drivers and made that illegal limit 0.02% as well. They then started what was then called the summary suspension law, and which means, and this is still done today, if you're arrested for DUI and taken in 8 out of 10 cases, or maybe more, if you refuse the breath test at the station, or if you take the breath test at the station and blow 0.08 or greater, then they take your license on the night or day of the arrest, and you're given a permit to drive for 45 days. After that, a suspension will go into effect unless you get an attorney who knows what they're doing and knows how to and when to stop the suspension. I also fought during this period of time leading up into the 90s, the breath test program in the state of Alabama. I felt that our system was not set up in a way to ensure accuracy and reliability of a given breath result. We were doing a single breath test with no calibration check done at the time of testing. The Alabama Supreme Court agreed with me and threw out the Alabama breath test program in a case I handled in the Alabama Supreme Court in 1994. So what happened after that was the Alabama Department of Forensic Science says, okay, you've thrown out our program, we're doing the best we can with the money that we have. We just don't have enough money. So the legislature then funded the Department of Forensic Sciences in a way that for every DUI conviction, Department of Forensic Sciences gets $100. So in my own way, that was my way of contributing to the public safety of the state of Alabama. In 1997, Remember, our look back period, whether it's the second, third, or fourth offense, was 5 years previously. In 97, yes, they changed it to a lifetime look back. In other words, if you had a DUI in 1970 and one in 1979, and you're arrested again, then it would become a third offense with a mandatory 60 days to serve in jail. That was in 1997. They increased a little bit some of the penalties in 2000 on second offense. Instead of 2 days mandatory in jail, up to 5 days to serve in jail. In 2005, they passed a commercial driver's license illegal limit of 0.04. In 2006, they went to a look-back period of 5 years. The rumor is that there are some legislators that have some old DUIs on their record, and so if they got busted for DUI now, then it would be mandatory jail. I have no idea if that rumor is true or not, but the law is that we're a look-back period to determine whether it's a first, second, or third, or subsequent DUI. We look back 5 years conviction date to conviction date. In 2011, the interlock lobbyist arrived. I understand the interlock, one of the interlock providers and manufacturers, their home office is next to the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers office somewhere in the state of Texas. So interlock has come along, and we've gone from a one sentence definition for DUI. Alabama's DUI law was one sentence. Now it's 14 pages of code. So if you get arrested, or if you have a friend or relative that gets arrested for DUI, get an attorney who knows what they're doing. I'm board certified in DUI defense. I think the only lawyer in North Alabama board certified by the NCDD, which is sanctioned by the American Bar Association. Our goal is to minimize the overall impact to you, your family, and your job. Timing can be important in DUI cases, so call us now for a case evaluation.